Hi guys, this is Aaron Rupp, and today what we're going to be doing is a setup on our Siemens controlled Fryer mill. Alright, so it's really cool control. It's going to be a little bit different than what you've seen before, so pay close attention, and if you need to, take notes. So the first thing I want to do is I've turned on the breaker in the back of the machine. It will take a couple minutes to turn on. Once it is on, you'll see this page right here, and the first thing I want to do, just like every other machine, is I'm going to release the e-stop and I'm going to push reset. Now when I push reset, that's going to cause it to turn on, and just like every other machine, I need to home it out. So I'm going to come down here to home return. You'll notice it says at the top, press cycle start to home the machine. Now before you do that, I've got my feed rate control down here is set to 0. Now remember, this is the feed rate control and the rapid override control. All right, very important that you notice that, because if you look up here, my percentages change as I go up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit cycle start. It will not move until I give it an increase to the feed rates. So you'll notice that all my home origin symbols have popped up. Now they were there before, but it wasn't at home yet. So this is where I want to be. I want to do my X, my Y, and my Z, so that's where I want to be. Now here's the thing, when I turn off the machine, these machines are made to be able to turn off a little bit separate or differently. I can simply push the e-stop, turn my feed rate all the way down, and then open my doors. Once you do that, your machine's technically turned off. These machines have a way of storing up the power, so that way it's not using it. So with that being said, if I want to turn on the machine from here, I'll go through the same process, release the e-stop and hit reset. At this point in time, I would either home it out, not necessarily. I don't have to home it out on this one because it has the drive motors on there that know where the machine's at if you haven't turned it all the way off. So the first thing I want to do, let's get to it, is I want to load my program. So up here in this door, I have my readers. So I'm going to take my USB and I'll just go ahead and put it in there. And what's cool about this controller is that it's set up just like a computer, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to come down here and I have my mode buttons right here. The main modes I'm going to be using today are going to be the MAN for manual, auto for running the program, program for looking at the program, and tool for building my tools in the machine. All right, those are our 4 main areas that we're going to look at. So I'm going to go to my program because I want to put it in here. Now when you come up to this, you'll see I have part programs, sub programs, or work pieces. Now we're going to put all of ours in the work pieces. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to push the right arrow over to open up the folder, and I'm going to go ahead and just make a new folder. Okay, so let's go through here and let's just come up to the work piece, and I'll hit my, usually you should see new right here. If you don't, we'll hit my side arrows right here until you see new right here. So I'll hit new. We'll give it a name. We'll call it a sample. I think I can use sample. Yep. We'll use sample. I'll hit OK. All right. From here, I'm just going to hit cancel because I'm not creating a new program. I'm going to put a new program in that folder. So if you'll notice down here, when I plug in my USB, it lights up. So I need to put my program from USB into the NC sample folder. So let's click on USB. I'll come down to it. It's going to be my inspection number 2. So all we have to do is come over here and we'll hit copy, come back to NC, and then I'll just simply hit paste. And what that does is it pastes that program in there. So if we want to look at this program, I can either hit open or side arrow. I'm a fan of hitting the side arrow. So one thing that's real critical on here is you'll notice there's a G291. G291. This tells the Siemens control machine to run a FNUC style program. So it's very critical that even though if you look right here, I have a description, you know, this program is for the Fryer mill. If I was to put this description or any of these descriptions above the G291, it will alarm out because I am not currently in a FNUC style program. Now up here, G54 and workpiece, this is all Siemens control style. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit more about the workpiece in a minute. But just for reference, if you have an alarm when you're trying to run your program, make sure your Fanuc program is underneath the G291. All right? So with that said, I'm going to look at my part. I can see that my material is 4.5 by 2.5 by 1.5 inches thick. So if I look up here, this workpiece, it's a box. I've got minus 1.25 for thickness from Z0 down. I've got 4.5 right there for my length, and for my width I have 2.5. So this kind of shows you how it's going to look like when you use your simulation. So for this setup, I'm going to have my XY0 is the bottom left corner of the part. So if I'm looking down at the part like I would a piece of paper on a table, the bottom left corner is going to be my XY0, and Z0 is a minus 10 thousandths from the top of the material. I'm vicing on 1 inch and 5/8 parallels. I'm using hard jaws. Make sure to vice on 150 thousandths max, because if I vice on 200 thousandths, my end mill will hit my jaws. Okay, so we're only going to set up tool number 1 so you can see it run. That's a 3/4 end mill. So enough talk, let's start doing our setup. I'm going to come to tool, and what I have to do is I'll come to here, and there's several different pages down here. I want to go to my tool list. So if it doesn't pop up to this screen right away, make sure that your tool list is active. So I want to build a new tool. I want to set my X and my Y first. So I'm going to come up here to new tool, and I'm going to come down. This actually has an edge finder built in. I'll hit OK. It says edge tracer. Now when I call up a tool, usually you call up T1 M6. Well, you would have to actually call up the entire edge tracer. So instead of typing all that, I'll show you a really cool way to get around it. So edge tracer, input. Okay, so length isn't important. The H is not important because I'm not using this tool to cut with. However, if I know the tool diameter, this is going to help me a lot during the setup. So for this edge finder I'm putting in here, okay, this diameter right here is going to be 200 thousandths. If I was using a full shank edge finder, it would be a 1/2 inch, but this surface right here is 200 thousandths in diameter. That's what I'm going to put there for my symbol diameter, 200 thousandths, and hit input. So that's good. So now what I want to do is I want to load that tool into a position in my carousel. Okay, the carousel is where the tools are being held, to the holding station. So we're going to hit load right here, load tool, and I'm going to put it pops up with a random location. I like this location. It's not specific, it just tells an empty location. So I'm going to hit OK, and then I need to put it in the machine. So what I'll do is I'll go back to manual. It's going to bring me to a different screen. I want to put that tool into my spindle in the machine. So instead of typing out edge tracer or whatever it was, I'm going to come up here to select tool. I'll highlight. If I had a bunch of tools here, I would highlight what I want, and I'm going to hit OK. Puts it right there. I'm going to hit cycle start. Now remember, before I hit cycle start, I usually put my feed rate to 0 just so I know that I'm in control of the machine. So I'll hit cycle start. Okay, it's ready to call up the edge tracer and put it in the spindle. So I like where it's going. So now, even though the tool is not in the machine, it thinks that it is in the machine. Very important that you know you're putting the right tool where the machine thinks it is. Doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but as long as you have the edge tracer in the spindle, you're going to be good. Okay, so I'm going to take this in here. Remember, I've got my drive lugs. I want to make sure they're in the right location. So what I'll do is, this machine up here above the spindle has a tool in and out button. If I push and hold it, it'll open up. That's what I want. So it won't go in there until I push and hold the button. Now once I have it in the right location, I simply let go of the button and it holds it in there. It does not, it's not critical on the orientation of your tool. So as long as it's in between right here, if you can see that, as long as the drive lug is in between this slot, you're in good shape, okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead, oh, but I put the wrong tool in there. There we go, we're going to put our edge tracer in there. So now that I have my edge tracer in there, I want to go ahead and set up my X and Y location. So I'm going to go ahead and close my doors, and you'll hear a snap when they are fully closed. Try not to open or close them too roughly because they are on roller bearings. The door will come off the tracks and it makes it kind of difficult to open and close. So enough with that. I want to turn this tool on. I want to do a spindle speed, let's say 1200 input, that's RPM, so S1200, and spindle M functions. If I come up here and push select, that's clockwise, counterclockwise, not move, and then back to blank. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to select counterclockwise so that way it'll show up better on the video. So with this all in place, I'm going to turn my feed rate back down. I will hit cycle start, and it does come on. Now remember, once I'm happy with it, I usually kick up my feed rate a little bit. Go ahead and put it back to 100%. So now down here to the bottom right hand corner of my feed rate handle is my actual handle control, or MPG for manual pulse generator. A lot of people just call it the handle. So what I want to do is I want to go into my axis, got X, Y, and Z. It's where I can go, and I'm going to start off in the 100,000ths. Okay, make sure you're far away from your material and that you're going the right direction. If you're not sure which way, come down to your thousandths and then come down in Z, and you'll actually see it's moving down. Now for most of you, this is probably plenty fast. So, but for the sake of the video, we're gonna go a little bit faster. Let's get over there. So I'll come over here. I'm gonna come down. Now once I get close to my material, I'm going to decrease my increments so that way I'm not going too fast and I make a mistake. Now I come down below the surface of my material, and I'm gonna straighten out my edge finder. Now once my edge finder is pretty straight, I know it's about to kick over. Now remember, you are not at the edge until you have kicked over. So I'm gonna reduce my increments, and I'm gonna start going towards it. And you'll actually see the indicator, the edge finder, come towards us, just like that. So once it's come towards us, what I'll do is I'll come up in Z, and then I'll go ahead and turn it off. Now make sure that we turn it off when we're using it, because if we don't turn it off when we're putting it back down there, there's a chance that we're going to bump it a little bit. But if it's off, it physically cannot go anywhere. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put that up. And remember, we're going to stay on this manual page for the majority of this setup. So remember, when we set the diameter of that tool, we set it up for 200 thousandths on the diameter. So what I'll do is I'll go to work piece, and when it comes up, you'll have a list of options that we can use. A lot of people, if they don't want to indicate their vise, can use this 3-point option, which will set your X and your Y, and it will orientate your vise to where it's technically straight. So if you can run a program with the machine crooked. So what I'll do is I'll go to single point. We're just going to set our X first, so it'll pop up here. We'll go to X, and if you'll notice, my graphics show me going in the positive direction, just like we have on our part. Now if I was going to go minus, that would be using the other side of our material. So let's put it back to where we were. And if it pops up and it shows measure only, we want to change that back to the work offset that we're using. Because if we look at our program, I'm using a G54. So I'm not going to put anything in my X offset right here, because my tool is already registered at 200 thousandths of an inch. So all I'm going to push is set work offset. Now when I set that, you'll notice up here on position, it says that I'm 100 thousandths to the left, okay, of my material. That means if I came in 100 thousandths, I would be right on center with that line. And because I have my tool set up correctly in the tool list, I don't have to do that. So we have our X set. Let's do the same thing with our Y. We'll grab our handle, we'll go into X, come up to the front of it, we'll come down, and then I'll come into the part. I'll slow down, that way I can make sure I get a good reading. My edge finder is pretty straight. I'll reduce my increments, and then I'll come into the part until my edge finder just breaks over. Now remember, it doesn't break over by very much, so make sure you're paying attention. So I'll turn it off and put it down over here, and then I will simply change to the Y. So once I'm on the Y, I don't have to type in anything else. I'm just going to hit set work offset, and you'll notice we have the same thing. It says I'm 100 thousandths minus from the front of my part. That's where we want it to be. That's good. So now we have set our X and our Y on this part, and this being our first time we're doing it, it's taking a little bit longer because we want to make sure we explain it well. So when you get into a habit of using this machine, you're going to be able to set offsets super fast. All right, so next thing we have to set is Z. Now I can't set Z yet until I set a tool length. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit reset. I'm going to handle up away from my material. Okay, I'll leave my edge finder in there. I don't want to take it out. But what I have to do is I have to build a new tool. So before I do anything, I'm going to hit my back button 2 times so that I don't actually accidentally set something as I'm doing this. So remember, if we're going to build a tool, we need to go into tool, and I'm going to hit my side arrow over here because I don't see it until I go where I need to be, and it's going to tell me to set a new tool. Let's make sure I'm in the right location. There it is. Once I highlight an empty location on my tool list, you'll notice I have the option to create a new tool. So I'll type in new tool, and what we're going to be doing is my 3/4 end mill. So we need to make sure that when we type this in, we have end mill right here at the beginning. So I'll just hit input, and now how it says cutter right here. Now here's one thing you'll have to pay close attention to. In your programs it says T1 H1, so my T's and my H have to match. Now here's the difference. In a Siemens control machine, if I put cutter there, the T1 would not be T1 anymore, it would be T cutter. So that would be the name, but that's a lot of work. Let's not do that. Let's make it easy and call it tool 1. Okay, tool 1, the T and the H have to match. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my diameter in there, which is 3/4 of an inch. Okay, now the next thing I have here is my direction of the spindle. Okay, the majority of the time you'll be using clockwise rotation because we're using right-handed tools. I have coolant option 1, coolant option 2. If you have coolant on your machines, you can turn these on. I usually just go ahead and turn on both of them. It's not going to hurt anything. And then that tool is ready to go. Now remember, I want to load the tool into the carousel. So this says location number 8. I'm going to go ahead and put it in location number 1. So that tool 1 has H1 is in location 1. I'm just trying to keep it easy to remember. So here's the thing. The tool that's still in the spindle is my edge tracer. So let's go ahead and call up tool 1 real quick. So I'll go down to manual, and I can call up this tool. Now if you want to take this tool out, or if you want to do it differently, this is another way to do it. I'm going to call up tool 0, input. Now remember, I'm going to turn my feed rate down before I hit cycle start. So this is what this tool 0 is going to do, is it's going to clear any tool out of my spindle. So if this is how you want to do it, that's perfectly fine. So let's come up here. Now I can type in 1 input, or I can come up to select tool, got my tool 1, hit OK, and then I can hit cycle start. Turn the feed rate down, hit cycle start. Looks good. So what it's doing is it's going to position 1 in my carousel. So if you look up here, you'll see tool 1. The machine thinks tool 1 is in the spindle. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and open up my doors and put tool 1 in the spindle. So remember, push and hold. As you hold it up in there, and once it's in location, you can let go. So I'll leave my doors open for this one because we're going to set the tool length. Now what I'll do is I'll handle to my 1, 2, 3 block, and I'm going to use the measure tool function. So the first thing I want to do is grab my handle, let's turn it on, and let's move towards my 1, 2, 3 block. Now remember, when you guys are using this, go slowly so that you don't break your tool on top of the 1, 2, 3 block. I'm going to move my 1, 2, 3 block out of the way. I'm going to reduce my increments, and then I'm going to go ahead and just start coming down until I know that my tool is below my 1, 2, 3 block. Okay? So one thing I want to do is I just want to put light pressure against my 1, 2, 3 block. Now I'm in the thousandths increments, this middle increment right here, and I'm going to start coming up 1 click at a time until my 1, 2, 3 block goes underneath my tool. Okay, and if you want to, I'm going to come down 1 click and then push again. So that's within 1/1000. So that's super accurate. That's what we want. So from here, I'm going to turn off my handle so I don't bump it. And be sure and hang it on the machine and don't put it on a toolbox because we don't want to drop it. So I'm going to move this out of the way before I do anything else and leave it right there. So here we are. We're going to go to measure tool. We're going to come up to length manually. I'm going to measure tool manually. Okay, so one thing I want to show here, I had fixed point pulled up. Now, if I was just setting all my tools off the top of the material, I would use workpiece and I would not have to use my 1, 2, 3 block. However, I'm going to be using a fixed point, which is from the table. You can see my T-slots just like I see in the machine, and I have a distance of DZ. Now I'm using a 1, 2, 3 block, and I'm using the 3-inch side of it. That's why it has 3 inches right there. Okay, so all I'm going to do is simply hit set length. Now you'll notice tool 1, the diameter is 3/4 of an inch. The length, that's how far it is from home position to the 1, 2, 3 block. Now here's what's cool. Now what you're used to is zeroing out your position page from here and touching the top of your material. Cool thing about this machine is it knows where you're at. You don't have to origin out your Z. I'm going to simply grab my handle, go positive and Z clockwise. Okay, that takes me up, and I'm going to come over and touch the top of my part. I'll come off to the side a little bit. Now remember, when you get close to your part, reduce your increments so that you don't crash into your part or break your tool. Just a way of being safe. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to handle close with my eye, and then I'm going to grab my piece of paper. Okay, now my papers, we'll say it's 5/1000 thick, and I'll explain to you in just a second why that's important. So I'm going to wiggle that back and forth while I lower in 1/1000 increments until my paper stops. So it stopped right there. Okay, now I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to set it down on the side of the machine. I'm going to hang it up. So from here, it's a little bit different. I'm going to go back. Okay, hit back one more time so I don't accidentally set a tool length. Now I want to measure the workpiece. Now this will only work if I'm using a tool that has already been set off the 1, 2, 3 block. So for this example, it has been. So measure workpiece. I'm going to do a single location, a single surface, and we're going to set the Z. Now one thing you want to pay close attention to, so my program said to lower it 10 thousandths into the material. So 10 thousandths plus the thickness of my paper would be 15 thousandths. So let's change that. 0.015 input. I put it as a positive number because that's how far above Z0 I actually am. Okay, that might take a little bit to sink in, but that always is a positive number. Once you have that in there, you can set work offset. So I'm going to go down an additional 25 because I just want to make sure it cleans up for this video. So I'm going to put 25 thousandths in. You can make it whatever you want, but if you put 1 inch in there, it's going to think 1 inch, or the Z0 is 1 inch in the material. That's not going to be good. So 25 thousandths, and then I'm simply going to hit set work offset. Okay? So if you'll notice in my value, that's where I'm currently at, and that's how much further it's going to go down. So that's where I'm at, minus 617 thousandths. So that's going to be a total of 25 thousandths. So we're almost done. That's really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send the machine home, and make sure you're really careful with this. Make sure you go Z positive clockwise rotations so that you come off the part. I'm going to turn it back to off. I'm going to move my paper. So now I'm ready to run my part. We'll take my 1, 2, 3 block out of here, and we're going to go ahead and close my doors. Remember to snap them so that it stays shut. Now what I want to do, we're done with setting up our work offsets, and if you want to look at your work offsets, I can go Tool, here's my tools, here's my work offsets. Now if you look up here, there's my X, my Y, and my Z. So those are all set in there. Usually I stay on this page right here in case I need a reference to it. So what I want to do is I want to see if this program is right. If I set my machine up right, my simulation will come up right. So let's simulate my program before we run it. So I'm going to push Program. I'm going to hit Open, or you can push the side arrow. And I have this button right here for Simulate. So let's simulate it. And what it's going to do is it's going to simulate the first tool. So it's going to come up here. There it goes. It did a facing operation. It's going around the part. And that's what it's actually cutting the part. This is good. This is good. Okay, this is showing me exactly how far. Now I got an alarm that says illegal T and 4 number because while this machine is running, it's looking ahead to see what tool's next. Well, we didn't set tool 4. That's why we have an alarm. We're just going to run tool 1. If I had all the tools set, it would run all the tools all the way through. So from here, I like what I'm looking at. I'm going to push Execute. Execute will not make anything happen yet. Okay? Execute is going to put you at the top of your program, and if you'll notice, it put me in auto mode instead of manual mode. So I'm going to take my feed rate, I'm going to turn it all the way down. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I got my optional stop on. That's good. I want to keep that on. If you don't see that, program control brings it up. You always want to run with optional stop on so you can check your part in the middle of the program. So I'm going to hit cycle start. See how it stopped on my optional stop? Hit it one more time, and now we're going to start running. So I'm going to that location. Notice how I'm not going 100%. I'm just going slow. I want to make sure that I am in control of the machine. Let's start cutting. Now notice as I was coming down, I'm watching my distance to go to see where I'm at. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reset because we can tell from our simulation what all was going to happen. We're going to cut around our profile and continue on with the other tools. So if I was to create this part, I would build the rest of my tools, and then I would go through and set the tool links on them. I only have to set the Z one time with one tool, and that's it. So from here, I would check my part, make sure it's in tolerance, And before I'm done, again, to power off, I'm just going to push the e-stop, open my doors, and turn my feed rate to 0. And that's how you do a setup on the Siemens mill.